Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's a Monday morning and you're watching Vuka Nazo, your morning news analysis show. My name is Sihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. Wow. Is it not going to be an interesting morning today? Before we get into any of that, a reminder, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, do me a favor, hit that like button and hey, share the stream. Help me grow my audience, my reach, if you will. And if it is on Facebook or rather on YouTube in particular, then subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification. Help me reach my goal of 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Guys, support the work that we're doing. We are wholly dependent on you. Anything between 50 to 100 Rand a month. 75 Rand is about the average that we do. And how do you support us, you're wondering? Well, you can find a payment method that suits you on our website. Go to bigdaddyliberty.com. There you'll find a payment method and you can support the work, especially as we're looking to hit the road soon enough. Now, enough with the jibber jabber. Let's get straight into the news. Okay, we begin here this morning. A story which I perhaps didn't spot, but indeed is an interesting one. It is the curious case of the Facebook rapist. Is he dead or alive? Now, I raise this issue because it's turning out to be quite the spectacle. Again, exposing the absolute corrupt nature of institutions in South Africa. Institutions in particular that are run by the state, whether by virtue of them being contracted out or run by the state directly. This time, of course, we're talking about correctional services. The story of Thabo Bester. Now, let me jog your memory back, of course, back to 2012, where you'll remember headlines were awash with the story of a Facebook predator or rapist, if you will, as he's dubbed in this country, the Facebook rapist. Indeed, this man was luring women using social media, of course, with all sorts of promises, from jobs to any and all sorts of promises for women, luring them, as I said, via social media, and then proceeding to rape these women. That individual, of course, Thabo Bester, was then eventually caught and convicted on the 3rd of May in 2012. That individual had been serving prison time, indeed a very long prison time. Now, here's the scandalous bit. Fast forward to 2023, and the allegation, of course, that Thabo Bester, who had been said to have died in prison in a fire, and of course this information coming out via the Correctional Services Department, it's now coming out that actually that may not be the case, and that instead, much like a fancy Hollywood movie or a series like Prison Break, Thabo Bester is said to have busted out of prison using an elaborate scheme of hiding behind an arson and the death of an individual in a fire to basically slip out of prison. So herein, dear South African, is the story of where in the world is Thabo Bester in our version of Prison Break, South Africa. Now, as I said, Thabo Bester, the Facebook rapist, was said to have died in prison in what was said to be a fire in a cell, a body being found, charred and burnt beyond recognition. And indeed, an investigation, as is always the case when there is a death, was launched, of course, in terms of doing DNA testing on this particular body. Now, the newspaper group Ground Up did a fantastic piece exposing the fact that actually not everything is what it seems, and that actually that fire could have been an attempt to dribble and distract, as Bester himself was busted out of prison. Now, let me get straight into that particular piece, and a city press piece that actually wrote up the key points around how this prison break was said to have happened. Now, as I said, citing Ground Up, the shocking revelations made by this group was that, firstly, the person on whom the post-mortem examination was carried out was killed by actually a blow to the head, sustained before the fire. This person was about 25 centimeters shorter than Bester. DNA results of Bester's biological mother showed that she and the dead person were not related. Also, Bester was moved to a different single cell on the day of the fire, and just before it caught alight, CCTV footage showed two people leaving the premises, that is the prison. Now let me pause at this point because the alleged now escape of Bester now includes, or rather involves, allegedly his supposedly customary wife, indeed a girlfriend of his who claims that she actually got married to him under customary law, and now is alleged that she is an accomplice in not only his escape but sheltering this individual. And evidence that is popping up on social media effectively shows a photo at a particular Woolworths in Sandton where it is alleged Bester is in the photo, including this famous doctor, this sort of celebrity doctor, Nandipha Magudumana. Now, of course, in this photo, as I said, went viral on social media. There are similarities between these individuals. And let me go back to this piece to read that very section. Now, there are clear similarities between the photo of a man taken at a store in Sandton and Bester. The photos were taken a few weeks after Bester's supposed death. End of quote. Now again, I raised the issue of this particular celebrity doctor because she's now also in the focus of what is now become a police investigation into this matter. Unlike the Correctional Services Department, which is still in denial and still effectively claims that no, they say it was Bester who died in that fire and that they're investigating further, the police themselves have come out and said, we're not being dribbled like our friends at Correctional Services, and they're investigating this particular matter, and indeed a manhunt is underway for Bester. Now, with this being said, the latest on this issue revolves now, as I said, around the celebrity doctor who claims to be Bester's wife and is alleged to be sheltering this man, Dr. Magudumana, of course, where I'll take you again to another News 24 piece, where citing a latest incident where Magudumana is in a conflict of sorts with her landlord, who's effectively kicked them out of the house. It's alleged that Bester has actually been living in this particular home and operating a shared business, and indeed a property holdings business, or property renovation rather business, called A Room Holdings, and that he's been operating under the new name or pseudonym of TK Nkwana. What a absolutely fundamentally corrupt situation this is. Indeed, the newspaper News 24 writing up the story as follows. Now, Ground Up, that's the newspaper that broke the story, is in possession of a recorded telephone conversation from last week where Bester and a client of A Room Holdings were basically in conversation, of course, as I mentioned, with Bester using the name TK Nkwana. Now, the several rumors during the rounds that Bester and Magudumana's whereabouts. Now, they are reports that they've fled the countries, with others saying they're still in Johannesburg. End of quote. As I mentioned as I conclude the story, because we'll keep an eye on it, the South African Police Service have said they are investigating this matter and that they are at a critical stage, as they say, of this investigation, especially as hard evidence has come out, as I mentioned earlier, that DNA of the charred body and that of a relative of Bester, his mother, did not match. So they're clearly after this particular individual. This is a fundamental breakdown of the institutions of the state, which are meant to protect us and indeed uphold the law and order. Where this ends is nothing short of a failed state, one in which the citizens of this country, who, by the way, are already experiencing this, if you go back to the previous crime stats in this country, where serious crime categories are on a sharp rise. Murder, for instance, up by 10.1% just in the last quarter. This is pointing out to a failure of institutions to keep our country safe. All right, some follow-up now on a previous story that we covered in a previous episode of Vuka Nazo. That's episode 135. You'll remember, of course, I mentioned how the Hawks had raided the offices of the city of Cape Town. In that raid, they were targeting, or rather focused on, the Mako member for human settlements, a one Malusi Booi. The update to the story: the mayor of the city of Cape Town, Jordan Hill-Lewis, after a meeting with the Hawks where he was briefed on the matter, has decided to fire Malusi Booi from his government, and Malusi Booi no longer now being a Mako member and is just an ordinary councillor. Now, it doesn't seemingly end there for Booi, with the DA now coming in and indicating that it also is weighing its options insofar as taking further steps. Let me read from a News 24 piece to find out exactly what those steps are. DA's Western Cape leader, Tertius Simmers, told News 24 that, quote, "We respect the steps taken by the Mayor of Cape Town to protect the integrity of the city and the DA, and have convened an urgent meeting of the provincial executive of the DA to discuss the possible suspension of Councillor Booi pending the outcome of the investigation. End of quote. Now again, a little bit of kudos once again to the DA for taking this action. Indeed, the Mayor of Cape Town, not even mincing his words and saying to protect the integrity of his government, he argues he took that decision to fire Booi. But I'll say it, and I'll say it as I always do. Guys, regardless of the parties, regardless of who you support, it's why I always say hashtag politicians are trash. Why do I say this? Because I recognize the danger of giving politicians and government too much power and too much of our resources as the public. It opens the door to this sort of collusion and corruption where individuals allegedly collude in order to fleece public funds or state funds for their own benefit. Now, of course, these are all allegations, and Councillor Booi should have every opportunity to effectively defend himself from these allegations, because remember, the law in this country and any justice system that you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. But nonetheless, it's just a further nail in the coffin of why I just simply have zero respect for any politician in this country. All right, that's it for this episode of Vuka Nazo. This is the Monday edition of the show. Remember, we come to you weekdays from 7 a.m. on Facebook and on YouTube. If you're watching on any of those platforms, please hit the like button and, of course, share the stream. I want to remind you that all the stories we do, the links of which are in the descriptor of this video, so make sure you check those out. Let me also remind you that you can find us and indeed support us via our website. Visit us at BigDaddyLiberty.com. With that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early once again for another episode of Vuka Nazo.